Welcome back, my friends. Thank you for tuning into the Slayer and Andy show, the show where we talk about precious metals, more specifically silver. If you want some of that shiny stuff, Andy Shectman is the CEO of Miles Franklin, a company that I am also proud to represent. If you want to purchase some of this stuff, send an email to info@milesfranklin.com. Let them know I sent you. Andy would love to hear it. I know we got some specials right now. Andy, did you want to talk about that?
Yeah, first let me just say Happy New Year to you and to everyone else out there. It's good to be back. Look forward to doing this with you every week this year.
Yep.
It's been a great sense of embarrassment to me, and I've been just telling people the last few days about our website, which I've been telling since August will be rolled out. And I think I sent a letter to our developer that he won't soon forget. I am hoping that it's within a week or two. It's just been a constant pebble in my shoe, if you will, where this was supposed to. We were promised that this would be up and running by the end of August, early September, and here we are. Months later, 7 months later, and now the last piece of the puzzle is almost done. It's the implementation of the sales tax into the handful of states that the sales tax programming into the handful of states that charge sales tax. So I've told your listeners that the website was close. It is, but I'll tell you, in all my career, I've never been more frustrated
Yeah.
ever about something. So I appreciate everyone's patience. In the meantime, yeah, info at Miles Franklin. We'll make sure you get an updated price sheet with all of our specials. Currently, we have assorted date silver maple leafs in sealed tubes and boxes of 500, and also the 2022 kangaroo in sealed
Nice.
tubes and boxes of 250, both for 419 over the price of silver delivered.
Nice. Another thing I wanted to say is, it's not your fault about the website. It's the developers. People, might think that, oh, he's just like slacking or something. It's out of your hands, and that's why
I mean, it's
I,
truly killing me. And I thank
yeah,
you for saying that. We had to switch developers in midstream for a myriad of reasons. And this developer has, while he's very talented and his group is, they lack communicative skills to say the least. And they are way behind, way, way, way behind. So I
yeah,
apologize. It's coming. And, but in the meantime, we won't be undersold, and we take great pride in dealing with your listeners. And so send us an email, info at Miles Franklin. Any questions you have, if you'd like to be contacted, send a phone number. If you just want to see the price list, let us know. We'll email that to you right away.
yeah. That's the coolest thing. And like I said, you guys staying a hybrid is really cool. It's important, like that connection. I'm sure a lot of people love what you talk about. And if you guys want to build that business relationship, get to know you, you have any questions about orders, or if your order gets messed up or something, Andy will make sure he fixes it compared to some random online dealer, doesn't really care about you. You could have a real relationship like buying silver from your friend, as compared to just some site. And I think that could be very beneficial in the coming time, like you've talked about before as well.
I appreciate
So
that. We're going to maintain a hybrid model even after the
yeah,
site. We will maintain, because I think there's a lot to be said for relationships,
yeah,
just like ours. And if you needed something, I'd be there for you. And the same thing would be true for clients of ours. Where
yeah,
where we are heading, I think relationships will be very
yeah.
important. So I appreciate your
Yeah,
comment.
you've already done that. I've had people email me like in a mess, very messy situation, stressful, and they're like, and I'm just like, shoot you through to Andy. They'll message me back, a couple days later, week later, like, thank you so much. Andy helped me with my problem. And they might not even have bought from. I think you just did that just to help them, like that's cool stuff. So yeah, I wanted to we're gonna do this a little different. I'm going to talk about kind of like chapters, all the different questions I want to ask Andy in this video, so you guys can kind of get an idea of all the different types of subjects. I wrote down like 4 or 5. So first I want to talk about the Silver Institute posted the numbers, and we have record high demand for the year 2023, which is something massive. I also want to ask Andy if 2023 is the breakout year for silver. Then we have new updates with BRICS nations, or I want to ask them if there is any. And then I just want to talk about China reopening this year and how that could be massive since they're the biggest consumer of silver. And then I also want to get his idea on premiums, if they're going to be rising or falling. Now there might be some little talk in between, but that's, the outline of the video. So I hope you guys stick all the way through. So yeah, Andy, record high demand in the year 2023.
So I agree with that. I mean, if we look at 2022, because that's obviously what we can focus
Yeah,
on. Uh,
1.21.
yeah, we saw 194 million ounces in the shortfall, according to the Silver Institute, which is a multi-decade high, four times what we saw in 2021. And what's interesting about that is that it excludes recycling, or includes
Oh,
recycling of
wow.
over 180 million ounces. So when you take the 180 million ounces out of the recycling numbers out of the total supply, and that's the one thing that people aren't understanding, is that those numbers that the Silver Institute publishes has recycling as part of the supply side equation. And so when you take out the 180 million ounces, you're at about 662 million ounces versus 1.1 million in demand. So the mine supply is vastly lower than the demand, especially when you pull out recycling. And it's interesting that they don't make a distinction about that. When recycling is excluded, you're talking a 439 million ounce shortfall.
Yeah.
You put it back into it, okay, fine. You got whatever. You got 194 million ounces. So it's a big, big, big deal when you factor in the recycling. But look, the bottom line is that there is far greater demand than there is supply, and they expect it to increase here in 2023.
Yeah.
And look, we've talked about the geological term epithermal. Silver is found in nature in a form called epithermal, very near the surface. So the big deposits were found long, long ago, long before the advent of advanced imagery. And that's why only 35% of all silver that comes to market comes from primary silver miners. 65% of that silver that is mined, call it 850 million ounces that is actually pulled out of the ground. 65% of it, over 500 million ounces, is mined by companies who have no business or
Yeah.
interest in byproduct.
Yeah. By
So
accident.
so a very small portion of silver, when you exclude byproduct mining and recycling, roughly 250 million of the 1.1 billion comes directly from silver producers. It's a very, very slippery slope, I guess you could say, in terms of dwindling global supply, in terms of mine supply, versus an insatiable and ever increasing demand, both monetarily and industrially.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people understand that. Like looking forwards, they don't look at the macro. I think they focus more on the immediate and don't put into play what would the demand look like in 5 years, 10 years, if we already are having supply deficits. Where is that silver going to come from in 5, 10 years? Out of
What
thin
you're
air?
basically, what you're basically describing is the difference between the Chinese and the Americans in the way that we look at things. We focus on minutes and hours and days and weeks. They look on things in terms of years and centuries, years, decades, and centuries. They have been positioning for a very long time. And if you look at where all of the silver and gold, and not just those types of commodities, but everything, the aluminum, the zinc, they are stockpiling everything that they can. And you look at a country like India doing the same thing now, who
Yeah.
imported 300 million ounces this year. So the demand is extreme around the world. And you're right. Where does it come from? It'll be very difficult to, I think, continue to, if things continue the way they are geologically. Remember, for 5,000 years, the mining ratio was equal to the price of 16 to 1 in its relationship to gold. Now that mining ratio is 7 to 1. And so what you see is a declining geological footprint.
Mm.
And as more and more demand in green and digital applications, on top of the revitalization we've seen in its monetary applications, where does it come from? You got that. That's anybody's guess at that point.
Yeah. Do you think that this is the breakout year for silver, 2023?
I think you could make a very strong argument that it is on many levels. And, in particular, I think it's important to note that we look at the dollar being ridiculously strong in 2022, and as strong as it's been in a very long time. And when you look at silver, which finished the year in dollar terms up about 3.5–4%, in the face of a massively strong dollar, to put that into context, the last time the dollar was this strong, silver was less than $5 an ounce. And so it just goes to show how strong silver demand is. When you look at, for example, it's a little bit easier to, I think, to figure this out in terms of gold. When you look at what gold has done this year, it was unchanged in dollar terms. Silver, as I mentioned, was up 83 cents or 3.6%. But when you look at gold, and I haven't figured it out with silver in other currencies, I suppose I ought to do that before I come on the Silver Slayer show. Shame on me. But in terms of gold, you look at gold in euros and UK pounds. In the UK, gold was up 11.8%, setting all new all-time highs in the euro, up 5.8%. In other words, the dollar strength has kind of blurred the strength of gold and silver. The rest of the world is seeing these at or near all-time highs, especially in gold and silver, much better performing in other currency terms than in the dollar. But when you look at silver compared to stocks, bonds, real estate, and cryptocurrencies, it outperformed than all of them, even in dollar terms, and with a dollar that was inordinately strong. And I'll tell you something, man, if you take a look at the dollar index on one chart laid over the silver futures price, you will see that when the dollar is strong, silver is inverted. It underperforms.
Oh yeah.
Dollar turns, silver outperforms. One other thing that I'd like to mention in terms of 23 outlook, that anytime that we've seen silver touch 92 to 1 or thereabouts, there's been 4 times since the year 2000. Anytime that happens, bang, it goes straight down the other way. Sometimes it takes years, or sometimes it takes months, like it did in 2010 and 11. In 2010, I noticed it up at that level. I'm like, my gosh, it's never, ever, ever here. And within 7 months, it was 37 to 1. And I was telling everyone, sell your gold, buy silver at 85 to 90 to 1. And then it reverted to its mean. Its average ratio, gold to silver, which, for 150 years, that average ratio, price ratio, has been about 42 to 1. And now it's coming out of the ground at 7 to 1.
Right.
That ratio had a lot to do with logistics and storage and the Industrial Revolution and all of the things that have gone into gold being more of a monetary metal than silver. All of a sudden, silver has woken up and is standing side by side with gold for its monetary purposes. So all of these ratios, I think, will really even accentuate themselves more when things start to correct. And I can simply tell you that everything from its ratio, from its geologic footprint, from the strength of the dollar probably turning over, the fundamentals could not be better for silver. And sometimes in life, you just got to have strong fingertips, and you got to be able to hang on and trust your conviction and trust your gut. And remember that this is not about becoming wealthy. And you it has better, I think, fundamentals than just about any investment on the planet. And that includes something like Bitcoin, which you could argue has great fundamentals. For some people's mind, it does. Some people's it doesn't. But the point is that it's a speculative investment, that being something like Bitcoin. It's not a store of value like we've been told. Silver is a store of value, but it also has, I believe, speculative investment potential. But I don't view it that way. I view it as the most undervalued asset on the planet that will have its day. Absolutely. And why not 2023? Fundamentals are pointing towards that for sure.
Yeah. I mean, talking about the gold to silver ratio, It was 125 to 1 in March of 2020. Yeah,
Yep.
like when that was happening, silver was like $11 or something, and we knew it was going to correct back down. Like it's not, we're talking about the highest, or I guess the cheapest silver's ever been to gold. So we knew it would. And for people, it's crazy that when silver's $11, everyone's scared to buy it, but when it's 30, everyone's buying it. Like the ratio, which is actually interestingly enough, it started in March of 2020. When you apply 3 years later, which would be now, silver's breakout year potentially, just like in 2008, which led silver to $50. In 2011, silver hit $50, which took about 3 years. There's a lot of similarities. But yeah, I don't think that people really understand the potential silver has. Like I made a video, I think yesterday, it was talking about all the different reasons why silver's so explosive. It was just listing one after another. It's like all the stars are aligning. It's pretty interesting. I don't think anything has as much potential, and it is, it's extremely undervalued compared to its value. Um,
Yeah, and it's interesting. Maybe I look at things the wrong way, but when I think of silver, I think it's conservative. I think it's a conservative play that offers tremendous upside potential. There's an anomaly there. Normally, you don't associate something that's conservative that you look at as a tool of preservation, as a tool of income generation, or
yeah,
as a tool of profit. And I'll tell you that in all the years I've been involved in investing, 33 years owning Miles Franklin, I've never seen a backdrop on, and I could probably, without even having seen that video, tell you what you said on across the board, and those reasons all stacked up together. The only thing that makes me puzzled about it is how the hell people aren't seeing this across the globe.
right.
Why you and I and the people listening to this show represent but the pimple on the back of the elephant's rear end, in terms of percent ownership in allocation across the globe. And when what you said is, look, no one wants to buy it when it's cheap, only when it goes up. When you speak about human emotion, this is why there's a whole school of investment ideology and wave theory. Kondratiev wave, Elliott wave. It speaks to human emotions. That's why so few people ever succeed in investing, because no one wants to break free from the herd. You want to follow the herd where the emotion is, where you have to see with your own eyes validation of a trend instead of trusting your gut and your intuition that the valuation is so absurd that it doesn't matter that the herd thinks you're unconventional and doing things that seem strange. Your gut knows that, hey, it's important to buy low and sell high, like we were told when we're young. And when you talk to guys like Rick Rule, who has made a very huge impact instrumentally on my life and on my career, he'll tell you that the most success he's ever had for himself and for his clients has been when he was purchasing when there was blood in the streets, so to speak, purchasing when no one would have ever made that purchase. He talks about one deal that he knew was so fantastic and it collapsed in price. And instead of giving up and capitulating, he doubled down. Now, most people wouldn't do that, but it turned out to make him incredibly wealthy amongst other trades he's ever done. The point of it is that when the fundamentals are so amazing the way that they are in silver, when all of the fundamentals that you cover, and in the video you did yesterday, where you talk about all of them one after the other, and yet the price doesn't quite make sense, but yet you see the inventories being bled down from the LME, the London Metals Exchange, and the COMEX, and you see such a shortage of supply globally. It betrays the price. And when you see silver actually finish the year up and hang in there at such a strong dollar threshold, where the last time the dollar was this strong, it was under $5 an ounce, it means something. And
Yeah,
so, yeah, I think we haven't seen anything yet. And it's interesting that people have to be validated before they catch on. And that's one of the reasons I think people are drawn to you, in that, you've been speaking fundamentals as a young guy for a long time. and you haven't been following the crowd. But when the crowd turns around to see where silver is, you won't just be someone who's been, you know, singing from the rooftops. You need to buy silver to the few people who are listening. You will be a leader in the industry. Take your place, rightfully so, as someone who has been saying this all along. And that's the most, you're not a Johnny come lately. You see the value. I see the value. Hopefully, your listeners see the value in buying an asset like silver, which has such tremendous fundamentals. And oh, by the way, it's on sale. That's when you're supposed to buy things, is when they're on sale. You don't walk into Nordstrom's to buy your daughter a new dress for the school dance, and you're like, damn it, it's on sale.
Right.
It's like you're supposed to be happy when it's on sale, and that's really, it should be the same way with investments as well. And silver, despite its incredible fundamentals, is on sale.
Yeah, I always, man, it's so true. I always tell people, when everyone's selling, you should be buying. Just do the opposite of what the majority does, because they need that confirmation and that validation. It can go higher, but we already
Right.
know it will. It's so crazy how that works.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's crazy. You said there's like theories out of that or something, like a school. What were you mentioning about that?
Uh, Elliott wave and Kondratiev wave. It's wave theory. Wave theory speaks to human emotions,
Oh,
and
okay.
the emotions that people have. In many, there are many people who study this will tell you that price be damned, it's human emotion that matters.
Yeah,
It's the emotions of the people that lead the herd, the waves. And I mean, you could look at it. If you want to kind of take a weird way of looking at it, no, that's not even a good example. I guess the bottom line is simply this: when Bitcoin was taking off, the people who realized the value in it when it was $1 or $2 or $3 or $5 or $10 or $20 or $50, no one thought there was real value, but the people who understood it for what it was. But it's interesting, when it was $40,000 and
everyone
$50,000,
is.
the herd was flat. Oh my God, it's going to 250, it's going to a million, and then it hit
Yeah,
65,000 and collapsed. Now there are people who are saying, like Peter Schiff, that it'll go to zero, and he wouldn't buy it under any circumstances. And there are other people who are smart and well respected who say it's going to 250,000 this year.
right,
Who's to believe? I don't know.
right.
The difference is that, to me, Bitcoin is digital air. Silver is indispensable in industry, indispensable in warfare. Think of all those missiles that are being
Yeah,
fired in Ukraine. There's basically a mint box of silver in the tip of every cruise missile,
yep. With
or
400.
Tomahawk.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. David Morgan and Michelle McCory were talking about that on Kitco News the one day. I remember.
almost exactly 500 ounces
Yeah,
per
that's insane.
ounce. So when you talk about silver, not only is it a necessity in things like solar panels and digital technology, cell phones and flat screens and in missiles and all, but the common denominator to all of that is that most of it, when it's used, it's either blown up in a missile, or it's a tiny, 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 tiny amount in the motherboard of an iPhone that isn't even worth recycling it,
Right.
or so it's used in industry and it disappears. But the fact that it has so many uses and has been money for 5,000 years, all the way back to biblical times, it's different. It's tangible. It's real. And you know what? I really do believe, when you look at the wealthy people in this world, the common denominator to all the wealthy people is not their bank account, it's their assets. Wealthy people have assets. Assets feed you, liabilities eat you. And so I just think that when you look at silver, it's a real asset, one that is needed in industry and demanded and sought after voraciously over the last several years, anyway, in monetary applications.
Yeah, man. Very well said. I definitely agree. So let's talk about any updates with the BRICS nations. Let's go into that, because I know a lot of people are curious and love when you talk about this. So
The BRICS nations are we are seeing, in my opinion, the culmination, if you will, of years worth of frustration towards the West. And that frustration really, I think, hit its peak when we weaponized the dollar. Now, I'm going to mention this from a United Kingdom and the European Union, rather, perspective first, because we look at the sanctions that were put on by the West. That's not just the U.S. That's also the European Union. And all we've ever heard is that their assets were frozen, right? Well, not the case. The European Union just voted to not only freeze those assets, but to confiscate them and to use them to rebuild war-torn Ukraine. And so if that doesn't wake up the rest of the world and say, are we next? Look at China, who is not only increasing their war rhetoric and telling their people, Xi Jinping is telling their people, hey, get ready for war, more or less. But they're going after Taiwan. They want to reunify China and go after Taiwan. Why do you think they've been selling our bonds the way that they have for the last 7 months in a row? Because they realize that if their intentions of doing anything along those lines that don't jive with the Western way, that they too will have their assets frozen and sanctioned, and in this case, potentially even confiscated. So much so that when we talk about, for example, Russia, they just announced this on Friday of last week that their national wealth fund has doubled its allocation of Chinese yuan and gold to 60% and 40% respectively from 30 and 20. And this is a fund that traditionally held dollars, yen, euros, and pounds. They have simultaneously reduced its holdings of British pound and Japanese yen to zero. They have none of it. So what you are seeing is not just a de-dollarization, but a selling off, if you will, or a repositioning out of the Western currencies into the Chinese yuan or renminbi, into gold. And this is huge. And, when we talk about China, look, it's important to realize that we talk about the commodities that they've been stockpiling. An article just came out and said that, yes, China's been stockpiling commodities since 2019. Listen to this. This is the global supplies. They currently hold 80% of the global copper supply, 70% of the global corn supply, 51% of the global wheat supply, 46% of the global soybeans, 70% of the global crude oil supplies they hold, and over 20% of the global aluminum stockpiles. Now, it's interesting because the London Metals Exchange just talked about a 65% bleed down in their excuse me, the 6 primary metals that are traded on the London Metals Exchange, and one of which is aluminum. A 72% decline in aluminum stockpiles, a 90% drop down in zinc. So who holds 20% of all the global aluminum? China does. So where is all of the silver, gold, aluminum, copper, zinc? Didn't we just hear that they have like half of all the global copper supply? Where is it all going? You keep hearing about a deficit in copper. These are the countries that are accumulating commodities. And this is going to be the backbone of the BRICS nations. And
smart.
Yes, of course.
It's very smart.
That's money. And when you look at the way that China is doing things, as I've been talking about today on a few other podcasts, the West, the way that they, like when the West went into the Middle East, call it 1974, or even well before that, after World War II, you were talking about an undeveloped, poor nations, undeveloped and unindustrialized, really. And now they're very wealthy and they want a seat at the table. And instead of going in there like we did, say, we'll give you protection, you sell oil in dollars. What China is doing, whether it be in South America or in Africa, is they are going in and saying, how about this? We'll industrialize your country. We'll build infrastructure. We'll build a digital infrastructure. We'll build railways and roads and bridges and we'll help you build the infrastructure to pull these resources respectfully out of the ground. And for that, we'll trade. you'll trade with us, but don't fret, because you will be part of a bigger union whose military might combined is much stronger than the US could
Oh
ever
yeah.
be, whose GDP combined is much bigger than the West could ever be. It is this growing union of countries rallying against the dollar. And so you're seeing more and more and more of China really asserting itself. So when we take a look at what's happened over the last year, we see Russia selling its oil to China for renminbi, and that's the same thing as the petro yuan bond, where the renminbi or the bond are both convertible into gold on the Shanghai Gold Exchange. Russia now selling their oil to India as well for rupee, and to the United Arab Emirates, who just announced they're joining the BRICS. They also just joined the BRICS Bank for dirhams. I know I'm pronouncing that wrong. It's the name of their currency, DIRHAMS, dirhams. Anyways, and India and the UAE are working on setting oil and gas trades in dirhams exclusively by 2023. So you're seeing all of these new arrangements that are being made. And when we talk about one of the things that, we keep seeing all of these things happen in the BRICS nations, there's no question about it. But one of the things that I have yet to hear about, and it was brought up earlier in the year, but I just really realized it here recently. We look at the deals that are being struck. You have Russia, Iran, and Venezuela, right? And these are all OPEC countries that, or are BRICS countries or Belt Road Initiative. All the countries I'm going to mention, they're responsible for 40% of the global proven oil reserves in the world. And each of these countries are selling their oil to China right now for renminbi at a very, very steep discount. But those renminbi, again, are immediately convertible into gold on the Shanghai Gold Exchange. This is why the Shanghai Gold Exchange is delivering so much gold. And this is how countries like Venezuela and Iran are sidestepping sanctions, and Russia. So then you have the countries in the Gulf area, the Gulf states, or Gulf countries like Saudi Arabia, Kuwait. These countries, they have the other 40%. So that's 80% of the proven oil reserves. 40% there, 40% in Iran, Venezuela, and Russia. That's 80% of the oil. The other 20% is in North and West Africa, which are being dominated by Russia and China, respectively, and Indonesia. Now, Indonesia is the wild card here, because think about it. What are we doing? We
Going
are
green.
right.
Joe
Right.
Biden's Green New Deal.
Thank you for saying that, because that's
We need to
exactly
go green. And maybe that's why they're taking all the silver and stuff, so we can't go green.
oh, get this. And this is why I love talking to you, because you get it. You get it in ways that
Yeah.
most people don't. Yes, we're going green. And he got up and told the members of the Paris Climate Accord, hey, we're going to give 200 billion to developing nation countries, because we can't. I mean, certainly as an insolvent country who's broke, who just spent 1.75 trillion dollars on an omnibus bill that we can't afford. But let's just add another 200 billion into developing nations because of the pollution we've created, and then told the world we're going to move away from fossil fuels and combustion engines. And so we're going green, right? So the president of Indonesia earlier this year made a statement, and I just realized it, and I knew it a while ago, but it didn't register, that his name is President Widodo, Wido, Widodo. Anyways, they've been OPEC members since 1962, Indonesia. And he is now calling for an OPEC style cartel for the battery metals for electric vehicles. Where are all of the rare earth metals mined? In Asia, the majority of them, Indonesia and China. And so we are going green, and now we're dependent upon other OPEC member countries who are saying, let's make OPEC in battery-powered vehicle rare earth metals. It's going from the frying pan to the fire, and it's just completely oblivious to the people making these decisions. And if you were Saudi Arabia, why the hell would you want anything, or OPEC? Why would you want anything to do with the West when we are openly saying we're going green?
Yeah.
When the 85% of human population that will comprise all the countries that are formulating the Belt Road Initiative, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and the Belt Road and the BRICS nations, they're not going green, and they will use oil, and they will embrace Saudi Arabia, and they will now incentivize Saudi Arabia to sell their oil for gold or for yuan or for the BRICS currency. And when that admission happens, it's over in this
Yeah.
country. And we are seeing this accelerate. And when you see things like the trust being broken in the world, where the European Union is not just freezing but confiscating assets, and the U.S. won't be far behind, the Western dominance is coming to an end as the rest of the world says, enough is enough. If you were frozen out of being able to use one payment system to pay for everything in your life, you would do everything you could to figure
Yeah.
out another way.
Another
And
way.
that's what these countries are doing. So while
Yep.
there hasn't been anything out of the ordinary over the last 2 weeks since we've talked, all I can simply tell you is, just as Zoltan Pozar put it, it is dusk for the petrodollar and dawn for the petro yuan. And I would add to that, petro yuan slash BRICS yuan. Any way you look at it, the dollar is in very, very, very
Yeah.
big trouble if these countries continue to diverge away from the dollar.
You just sparked so many video ideas in my head when we were talking. Like, man, yeah, like everything that I've been talking about and I've been trying to kind of investigate over the last 2, 3 years, the BRICS nations is the missing puzzle piece. It everything makes sense now that it all makes sense to what the United States or the West is doing, and the BRICS nations was that missing puzzle piece where I'm just like something doesn't, and once you started talking about it, and then I realized, all those countries are the ones buying all the silver, and but why? And once you really start to talk about the oil and their incentive of, why would they want us to go green, and what are they going to do? Just not let us go green by taking all the silver that we need to make these solar panels. It just all makes sense now. And it comes full circle. And I think that's really important for people to
Well,
understand.
and I love you for saying that. But and look at it, take it a step further. On one article, it says that London Metals Exchange, on the six metals they're holding, are at the lowest levels maybe ever, and a 72% drawdown in aluminum. The next article says China has 20% of all the aluminum stockpiles in the world. Put it together. One is
Yeah.
being drawn down, one is going higher. Where the hell
Yep.
do you think it's all going? Reuters and Bloomberg published an article saying 400 tons of gold were delivered in the third quarter. Only 120 tons are verified. Who are the mystery whales buying the 280? Geez, I wonder who's accumulating all of the gold. Where is it all going? It's going to China. It's going to Saudi Arabia. It's going to Russia. It's going to India, just as they surmise. And then the next week, China comes out and says, yes, we've been accumulating gold. And here we're updating our numbers. And their lies, their numbers are nowhere near the amount they actually possess. Where Alistair McLeod, who's one of the brightest minds in the world, will tell you they have 38,000 metric tons, 18,000 by the people, 20,000 by the state, which would be 5 times more than we supposedly have
Wow.
held at Fort Knox, which hasn't been audited since 1956. So, yes, it's no coincidence that the Western exchanges are being bled dry of all of their metals, both industrial and monetary. And at the same time, you're seeing the countries that are comprising the BRICS nations go on a buying spree, voraciously accumulating whatever they can get their hands on. That's not a good thing, because there's an old saying, and I don't know how old it is, but it's old, and that is, he who has the gold makes the rules. Now, when I say gold, I mean silver too.
Yeah.
Look at India importing 300 million ounces this year. That's just one country. These countries realize that if you want to get real, it's about having tangible items.
Yeah.
It's not about having pieces of paper that say you have this. It's about having the real things that command value, not pieces of paper that are reliant upon counterparties to make good in their promises. When you're talking commercial banks and whatnot, it's just a quagmire and a incestuous mess that is systemic. And as one falls, the others will fall with them. And the lies that have been made and the rehypothecation that has been perpetrated on people who think they have positions in paper metal will find out, no, you're going to get cash settled and it's force majeure and the exchanges are being shut.
Yeah.
That's why you're seeing the bleed down before that happens. That's why you're seeing record withdrawals out of COMEX. And look, when you take something out of the COMEX ecosystem, you've lost all industrial liquidity, because to get it back into the COMEX would require a tremendous amount of money if you have to assay everything, and a tremendous amount of time. When it leaves COMEX, it's a one-way street and ain't ever coming back. And the same thing would be said about the LME.
Yeah. They're basically just creating a new gold standard. That's it's what that's what they're doing. And it makes sense. And I like how you said you said this is a bad thing. You who owns gold makes the rules, because yeah, we make a pretty penny. That's what I always talk about. Yeah, silver hits triple digits, but at what cost? We're talking about going green. We're talking about like big things happening. I think people are just so set on, I'm going to get rich, but they don't think about the aftermath. They don't think about how crazy things are going to be. Yeah, you got money, but we're talking about some serious stuff happening globally. And I don't
If you
think,
see triple digit silver, a McDonald's hamburger will cost you $10.
yeah,
That's because what that means is that the dollar that we measure everything against is losing value. I
right,
think
right.
what you do is you look at silver sitting on the ledge of the bathtub, and the water underneath it is the value of the dollar. It's not that silver's going up and
Right.
down, it's the
It's the
water. And you pull the plug on the
damn,
bathtub, silver didn't go anywhere.
right. It's
The
just the
dollar that you measure it against just got.
I just said that to someone. Someone commented on one of my videos and said silver's never going to reach $50 again. And I said, you really believe that? That means you don't understand the dollar, because in due time, $50 is equal to, $20 today. And you got to remember that part as well.
Yeah, well, my dad in 1973 or four bought a Corvette, and he paid $3,600 for it. Brand new Corvette. That same brand new Corvette Stingray right now is over $100,000. When you look at the GI Bill, when the vets came home from World War II, were given a $10,000 life insurance policy that won't even buy you a casket anymore. When you talk about a Federal Reserve who says we're going to try and maintain 2% inflation, and inflation is much higher than that. But even at 2% inflation, what you're witnessing is the constant devaluing of the dollar. And the 2% is a lie, because the way that they measure it excludes the things that are inflating, the things that we need, not the things that we want, which might be deflating. Things that we need are going up. Any way you look at it, the dollar is poised to lose value globally. And when people say, well, inflation might be coming down, no, it's not coming down. All of the money that's been cranked into the system since 2008, a lot of it has been holed up in financial assets. So when you see, trillions of dollars in just on the Fed's balance sheet since '08, almost $8 trillion added to their balance sheet in interest rate investments like mortgage-backed securities and treasuries. All that did is enhance speculation and incentivize people to pour money into the markets where price discovery is impossible, and the misallocation of resources and investment and malinvestment has created an environment where, when this all starts to correct and the big money in earnest starts to come out of these assets and into real things, price inflation will only get many, many, many times worse. I don't think we've seen anything yet in terms of inflation. Yes, it peaks and valleys if you look at historically how inflation goes, but the amount of money that's been created and the amount of money that's been holed up in assets as they move out of the stock market, move out of the bond market and into real things, this ain't over yet. And we see the world dump dollars. It's a whole new mountain of hell that it's a religious experience when the whole world dumps dollars. Now you're talking hyperinflation, and that's something that this country is certainly not prepared for, when you realize it's pretty much the lowest level of savings ever with the highest level of credit card debt, and we are not prepared to weather that type of storm.
I don't think people realize that I'm being factual when I say that the dollar's lost 98% of its original purchasing power. Not 99%, not 97, 98% is a literal number. So what happens when we do hit 100%? I mean, every fiat-based system has collapsed throughout history, lasts around a century or so.
True. I remember Dr. Franz Pick, one of the first books I ever read. It was this big. I think it was called The Case for Gold. I think it was a long time ago. But the one comment that he made that stuck with me was that all currencies inherently are meant to die,
Yeah.
and all currencies inherently will retrace to their real value. Piece of paper, it's worth nothing. So, and that's why, gold and silver are money, and the currency that we use that we think is money is actually currency. And you're right, and it's been mismanaged so horribly that I don't think that the inflation beast has been contained. In fact, if anything, I think it's just been maybe held back for just a little bit by bleeding down the
Right.
strategic petroleum reserve and raising rates. But that's just a short-term deal. I think we'll see this is the year where I think people will realize that inflation is here to stay for a long time, and that's when you'll start to see real exodus out of the markets and into things like gold and silver. That's when you see a lot of the things that you and I have been talking about really take shape.
Yeah. So I did want to mention something else. It's kind of shift gears here. Do you see premiums rising or falling in the next year or so?
Well, I will tell you, I was caught off guard as everyone else in the industry was. I've never in 30 years seen premiums fall the way that they have right now. And I've been consistent over the last few weeks telling people why I thought that was. I'll tell you too. Um, I think that you had kind of a perfect storm. You had, since Thanksgiving, the entire industry has almost like you shut off the light switch. It went from absolute crazy for the last 3 years to demand that has really been muted since Thanksgiving. Now, the last few days, we've seen an uptrend. But from Thanksgiving forward, my take on it was that for the first time in 3 years, people have been able to travel unencumbered, travel without the threat of a pandemic hanging
Mm,
over, spending time with family, and doing things that were very difficult for people, especially with compromised immunity and whatnot. Um, and at the same time, you had the 2023 allocations from the six sovereign mints come out. So you had an influx of supply coupled with people just checking out. I know I wanted to so badly from the day Thanksgiving hit to New Year's. I just wanted so badly to try and check out because, like everyone else, being holed up and being caged up and having all of these restrictions on top of dealing with a world that seems to be spinning out of control, I wanted to let go. And I think people felt the same way. Now you put that into a mix of increase of supply. The primary distributors, there's a handful of them out there. They have huge commitments to the mints that they'll take, millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of their gold, silver, and platinum, and some cases palladium and whatnot, and they have to buy it from them. Those are the contracts that they have. And so you have a situation where there's a huge influx of supply. At the same time, there's a turn down in demand because people are just outliving life for the first time with family and friends in 3 years in terms of the holidays. So the premiums have come down to the lowest level we have seen since the pandemic started. Uh, do I think things have changed? Not even a little bit. I think this is the sweetest spot that you could find to buy metal right now, where we're selling silver maple leafs on special right now at 419 over spot. They've been double that for the last 2 years, 3 years. But here again, we, the people owning metal, such a small portion of the overall picture. And I think the realization this year will be that markets are in trouble. And as you see people start to look for alternatives, remember, 0.5% allocation to precious metals across the whole US matrix, from the Harvard Endowment Fund all the way down to Joe Sixpack. If that number goes to 5%, keeping in mind over the last 40 years, the mean, the average has been 2.5%, the high point 8% in 1980. So, if it goes to the mean to 2.5%, what? So you have $1 million in assets and you have 2.5% of it in gold and silver. Does that seem like a lot? No. But what if everyone had just 2.5% allocation to silver and gold? Doesn't seem like a lot. That means you have 97.5% of your money invested elsewhere. That's a five-fold increase in demand. And that's just in the US. this is a global phenomenon. And I think people around the world are waking up to inflation, to currencies that are being debased, to geopolitical tensions, to all sorts of issues that at some point has to push things over. And when you see the biggest money in the world front running this, that tells me that the people will wake up, just like we were saying earlier. They don't buy when they should. But who's buying now? The people who are closest to the information.
Yeah,
The,
that's a
the
good
central
point.
banks, the commercial banks, the sovereign wealth funds, the family offices, they're gobbling everything up. Why? Because not only are they closest to the information, they have all of the money. And so the big money that's always closest to the information, that always front runs the public, is always in position before the public catches on.
Mm.
It's exactly what they're doing. And that's why I said a lot in 2022 that the accumulation off of the exchanges, bleeding them down to record low levels, betrays the ability of the commercial banks, the central banks, and the big money to suppress price on COMEX, which is just a way for them to accumulate all of the physical, not only at subsidized prices, but misdirecting the public, because most of the public, most of the investing public, they use technical analysis, right? So if you can just paint the charts so that the technicals do not seem bullish,
Right.
you have the ability then to literally at subsidized prices without any competition accumulate all of the world's physical metals. Look at the London Metals Exchange. 90% drawdown in zinc, 75% drawdown in aluminum. Where the hell is it going? Right? Price hasn't taken off. Why? Because they can suppress the damn price on paper. It's the tail wagging the dog. Where the futures price controls the price of the commodity. It should be the other way around, where the commodity controls the price of the futures price. And so this game that is being played, that used to be played by the West to make the Western system seem stronger than it really was, is now being played against us by the rest of the world doing the same game. Suppress the paper price, but only accumulate all of the physical. And when they let the price suppression go, they're the ones holding all the physical. Just like 92% of the zinc is gone, just like the London Metals Exchange has the lowest amount of silver inventories they've had in the 140-year history of the exchange since they started keeping records. And so, look, to me, that betrays any price manipulation, is the drawdown in supply, because you need to be very sophisticated and very well heeled to pull metal off the exchanges the way that they are. It is not an easy thing to do. And you better know what you're doing in order to do it. And then when you do, taking possession of 1,000-ounce silver bars at 70 pounds a piece, and you're drawing down millions of ounces, where the hell's it going? Who's
Right.
taking possession of all of that? How are you getting it there? Where are you going to store it? This is the biggest money in the world front running what's coming, and we are all being numbed by the price. People are looking at the price, and it's easy for me to say that. Yeah, well, he's just, it's easy for him to say that, but it's true. If it weren't for the bleed down in physical supply, then I might be slightly more concerned about the poor price action. But if you realize that a company like JP Morgan paid $920 million for suppressing the price, but according to Ted Butler, through that, they've accumulated 1.1 billion ounces of silver and 50 million ounces of gold.
Yeah.
That's the largest position of metals the world's ever seen at one time. And they did it while pleading guilty to suppressing the
Yeah.
price. If you don't think this is happening on a scale all around the globe, I got a bridge to sell you. The biggest money in the world is using price to misdirect everyone so that they can reposition into what amounts to a once-in-a-generation shift away from the dollar. And they're using gold and commodities to back whatever infrastructure will arise to replace it.
Yeah. Did you know a fifth JP Morgan ex-employee got caught now?
No, I
Another,
haven't.
yep, a fifth one. I just covered it. It was actually on like US, the US government's official website too. But yeah, fifth one now. I mean, there's obviously tons. These are just the guys thrown in the fire, I'm sure,
Well, I'm sure they're putting the screws to Michael Nowak, who is their
Yeah.
head. And
Yeah,
he's
he
fine. Jim did it, and Bob did it, and Fred did it, and Julie did it.
yeah.
Well, we'll give you a little less of a sentence, but and they should all be. I mean, they should all go to jail for what they've done. What's even more criminal, though, really, is the fact that they're allowed to be the administrator of the world's largest silver trust, SLV,
Yeah,
at the same time they admitted to
yeah, that's
and evaded somehow evaded RICO charges, which could have gone after the head honcho, Jamie Dimon. But you know, you know,
Jamie.
but look, the bottom line is that you take away the important thing is that they admitted guilt, and yet through all of that, they have accumulated what amounts to the largest stockpile of silver the world's ever seen at one time, and administrate the largest stockpile of investable silver,
Right.
SLV, at the same time. So the whole thing reeks. But the question I would ask is a little deeper: is that are they doing it at the behest of the U.S. government? Are these indictments and these prosecutions, are they just a sideshow? Are they going to get released for good behavior 6 weeks after they're put into jail? Who knows? And maybe there's no news coverage of it. Who knows? Maybe they're just doing this to
Right.
placate, me and you and Ted
That's
Butler and all the people who've been screaming about this. Who knows? Maybe, maybe not. All I'm simply saying to you is that if it were so egregious that people are going to prison, if it were so egregious that at the time it was the largest fine ever paid to the Justice Department ever, then why would they be allowed to still administrate
yeah,
the
that makes
largest silver trust in the world and now are helping with gold ETFs out of Switzerland? You're talking the fox guarding the hen house, and the fox hasn't eaten in a while, is hungry as hell, and the fact that they're being allowed to do it reeks. I mean, it's just like they're placating because they were originally brought up on RICO charges and they avoided the RICO charges and got the stupid what's it called, spoofing.
yeah,
Well,
spoofing.
it's a
Yeah,
lot deeper than that, but
yeah,
nonetheless, what it does is shines a light on the fact that the biggest money in the world has been using price to misdirect, to accumulate. Same thing is happening on the LME. Same thing is happening by other big institutions on COMEX. It's not the fact that it's being manipulated. That's not debatable. What is why, and I would argue it is to de-dollarize and reposition, and it's the biggest money in the world that is doing it. Maybe even our own government.
yeah, yeah. I thought it was three for spoofing, one was for racketeering, and then the fifth one it just got caught. I don't know. That whole situation is crazy, but yeah. So is there anything else you wanted to mention before we wrap this thing up?
No, just that I love doing this, and let's get
Yeah,
on the schedule and do it every week,
yeah,
Monday, Thursday, and because I think this is going to be a crazy year,
yeah, it
and
is.
I think it's important that we stay on top of this, and I love doing these with you. So I just want to wish you, especially, a very happy, healthy New Year to you and your family, and everyone out there who stuck with us through all of these crazy times. I wish I didn't believe we ain't seen nothing yet, but I truly do. So whether it be looking to accumulate precious metals, you can send us an email at info@milesfranklin.com. And just know that a portion of every sale we give back so that you can continue to do what you're doing. And it's important. There aren't many people like you and Chris Marcus and Wall Street Silver. There's just a few of you. David Morgan, my dear buddy David. There's about 4 or 5 of you out there that are doing a yeoman's job of telling the world what's going on, and we're happy to be part of it. So I appreciate it for what it's worth, and I'll look forward to seeing you next week, Wednesday.
Yeah, I appreciate that too. All right, everyone, we're gonna wrap this video up here. Thanks for tuning in. If you like the video, then please like the video and subscribe because I do post daily videos. So yeah, I'll see you guys soon. Peace.